Welcome to another episode of Marketing Tips for Doctors. I'm your host, Dr. Barbara Hales, and today we have with us a very interesting guy by the name of Jason Berko. Jason is the founder and SEO director of Break the Web, a boutique inbound marketing agency based out of New York City. Since he started dabbling in SEO almost a decade ago, Jason had consulted with brands of all sizes to help them gain a competitive edge in search. And welcome to the show, Jason. Now, I just want to point out that I called him Berko because that is the Twitter handle he goes by, but his actual name is Jason Berkowitz. Welcome to the show, Jason.
Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. It's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, that's what my friends used to call me back in our younger days, Berko. So I'm cool with it. It's been a while, but you can call me Berko.
Okay, for our listeners out there, I just want to get a few things clear. And the first one is that SEO stands for Search Engine Optimization, and it's a way to optimize your website so that it can be found when people are doing searches or surfing the net. How did you get into this, Jason?
It was kind of by accident, in which I was living in New York City, going through the New York City hustle, and I was trying to build a business for myself. It was a personal training business at the time. And I was just exhausted of all the outbound type marketing of trying to get new clients, trying to cold call or a network or put in ads in the newspapers and stuff in the local catalogs. And my thought was, what if I could have people looking for me, especially on Google? And that's where I came across the acronym SEO. The idea was that people would type in personal trainer NYC or other related search queries, and that I would appear. Again, SEO was totally different back then. This was a little over a decade ago. And I was able to learn SEO and use these tactics myself on my own business with massive success. Then it became kind of an obsession, like a weird obsession. Oh, I did this for myself. I can do this for other people as well. And then it just spiraled out of control from there.
Well, I see, looking at you, that you're pretty ripped. Do you do any? Do you do any talking to clients about getting healthy or physical activity?
Not anymore. I've actually did a complete shift, and now I'm in the marketing world. So I kind of left the PT world behind me. Don't really have much involvement unless it is a client that happens to be in a similar arena. Like we're helping a gym right now out in Long Island City, New York. So in that arena, maybe it may cross over, but no, I'm not probably qualified to give advice anymore.
Okay. Could you tell people what you mean by organic traffic, or how you could increase organic traffic to a person's site?
Yeah, we classify organic traffic as somebody that's organically or naturally going to Google, typing in a specific search query, going through the list of results, and then landing on your site. That is what we would consider organic traffic. If you do have analytics to see what kind of traffic you have on your site, that would be the acquisition and then the organic traffic tab to see how many people are directly coming in from organic search to your website. And that's how we classify organic traffic. Getting there is a much different conversation about the tactics and using search engine optimization itself.
How does a person get increased links for outbound or inbound traffic?
Links from other third-party websites?
Yeah.
Going back to theirs?
Yep.
There's a lot of different ways that you can go about that. We actually have internally a whole department dedicated to that. The way we do it is a bit more old school kind of outreach, building connections and building networks and relationships with relevant publications. On the smaller scale of things, any practice can technically just become members of associations that might have member directories, in which you can, of course, have a profile with your name, your information, your address, business phone number, and of course, a link back to the clinic site. That is a great way of getting some good natural relevant links. But of course, outreach and getting contextual links, for example, a link that is within an article on something that is thematically relevant, that's even more powerful. So on the bottom scale of things, you can go for those profile links by joining relevant associations, joining relevant communities in the industry. And then on the high end, outreach, kind of like PR in a way, just building relationships and getting the word out there.
Do press releases help in terms of links or bylines from articles?
Not anymore. The only time we would recommend our clients to use press releases is if they genuinely have something newsworthy to share. So if they've acquired a new clinic, opened up a new location, whatever it might be, then it might be necessary because it's natural and it makes sense to do a press release to just put it out there. Again, the goal necessarily wouldn't be to achieve links. While it might indirectly help more people see the press release, where people might link to you, might get picked up from somewhere. But as an SEO strategy itself directly, we typically wouldn't recommend it anymore. It's just a waste, kind of an old school thing where Google is a little bit better at detecting what's a good natural link versus what's just a press release that anybody can just do.
Right. So, do you recommend that they do articles or blogs in other people's sites?
If you have the connections, then absolutely. And of course, in the content that you might be submitting to someone else's site, if you start referencing something that you go in much deeper on your site, there's a nice natural link to go from that site and that article back to your site, where your site can technically be the source of information, the resource link on the site you're submitting to. So that's a great natural way of putting in an article. Just making sure that, again, you're providing value to their readership as well, as opposed to just being in there for the link.
Sure. What about social media? Do you recommend that social media involvement will help their site?
With SEO directly, unfortunately, it won't have any effect at all with SEO. Again, it might have an indirect effect in which you're active on social media, you're building the brand, somebody gets in your brand, or somebody likes an article that you published on social media, they share it, then somebody else finds it, they link to it. So indirectly, but unfortunately, as a direct effect with SEO, again, social media is still great. It's another form of marketing, absolutely, but directly correlating that into SEO, unfortunately, is not possible.
You've become very successful with your company. How did you get your word out? How did you increase your visibility for the company that you have now?
So, of course, doing SEO, and SEO is a good, healthy mix. We've been talking a lot about links, and that's what we would consider off-page SEO, which is 50% of the SEO game. The other 50% is on-page SEO. So making sure the aspects of the website itself is contextually relevant, making sure that Google sees where you are, what specialty you have, where you serve, who do you serve, and then making sure that you're trustworthy. That's where the links come in. So on-page SEO signals relevancy, off-page SEO signals trust, and they both come in at a 50-50 percentage typically. That's what we implemented on our site, thankfully. Also, other forms of marketing, because while we are an SEO and inbound marketing agency, we have utilized other forms like relationship building. We do have a paid advertising department internally, so we do some paid advertising as well. And even just tapping into our existing clients has been really good, and asking for referrals, and that simply works too.
Where do you recommend paid advertising for the most return on investment or the best effect for healthcare professionals?
I might be biased on my answer just because of our own specialties. There's a lot of different places where you can invest. Typically, the good ones to start with paid advertising are always Google Ads, Facebook, Instagram. Those are really the big three that at least we offer in terms of paid advertising. That's where my biased answer would be, and recommend going in that realm of, because again, it's inbound. So let's say someone's looking for a podiatrist in city, New Jersey, Teaneck, New Jersey, as an example. If you have a Google ad, or if you're there organically too, or maybe both with SEO and paid advertising, there's a decent chance that you might get that click from search to your website. And the person who's making that search already has a specific intent. They know what they're looking for. They're ready to spend money. They have a problem. They just need a solution. And to have you right there at the forefront could be extremely beneficial for any business.
How long would you say it took from starting SEO on a website to the time you really saw an effect or moving up on the searches?
That's the million dollar question right there. And the typical SEO might answer, it depends. What we tell our clients is that if we're able to follow a strategic timeline, they'll start seeing noticeable improvements within 3 months. But again, noticeable improvements itself is very ambiguous. A noticeable improvement can be going from page 9 to page 4. That's a noticeable improvement. Is that going to increase traffic? Probably not. You really got to be on page 1 and or page 2. Even Google recommends to brace for 12 months to see some really good success when you start a new SEO campaign, especially because if you do hire an agency, for example, or you bring people in-house to work on the SEO, there's going to be a lot of moving parts, and the first couple of months might actually be spent on foundational stuff like the on-page SEO, the technical side of things, the coding of the website, and getting all those things, of course, not only audited and checked, but then implemented does tend to take time, especially if there is a development team as well internally where they have to allocate resources to that. So a couple of months to see some noticeable improvements. If the market is extremely competitive, it might take a little bit longer, but we tell our clients to mentally prepare for a year-long campaign.
Do you recommend that until the time comes when they could move up to page 1, that they pay for an advertisement that sticks out above the categories in the Google searches, on the Google pages?
If the budget allows, then absolutely. The more real estate you can get on page 1 of Google, the better your chances of getting that click from search onto your website.
What kind of fees are they asking these days?
The budget could be entirely set by you, but there is a cost per click per keyword. So for example, you don't pay unless somebody clicks, if you are using paid advertising, unless somebody clicks on your listing, you're not getting charged. There are certain search keywords that might have a higher cost per click depending on demand than others. So again, it really depends on the cost per click. Some budgets can be $1,000 a month on the low end. Some budgets we've seen as high as $20,000, $30,000 a month. It all depends on the demand, the cost per click, and of course the market itself.
So if a doctor came to you and said, I really would like to pursue advertising because currently I'm not as busy as I would like to be and I'd like to grow the practice, how much money should I set aside in my budget realistically, knowing I don't have that much money? So, like, what would you say?
Again, I could speak from our agency specifically. So we are an agency. We have team members in-house, so the costs might go up a little bit versus hiring a freelancer or a contractor who might be able to have the cost low. If you are doing paid advertising, the typical split would be you have something called the ad spend. That's the budget that goes directly to the platform. So if you are doing Google ads or Facebook ads, they get the ad spend. But then you also need to have some sort of management, somebody who's managing those ads, making sure they're delivering as best as they need to, somebody who's optimizing the performance of those. And that tends to be a separate management itself. So an all-in, on our side of things, we would typically require a client to have an all-in budget of maybe about $3,000 per month. Again, the cheaper options might also be learning it in-house, getting the right training, or hiring a contractor, especially somebody who might just be starting out as a freelancer and they just they've been learning through education and they don't necessarily have the portfolio, but they want to test it out. That's also a really great option because they're hungry, they're in growth mode, they're ready to learn and test things out and watch the results come in.
That makes a lot of sense. What tips would you give our listeners in terms of increasing their visibility through SEO or, inbound marketing?
Yeah, I would make sure that everything starts with what we call keyword research, figuring out what people are typing in your market, especially at different stages of the funnel. So we have the bottom of the funnel, which is going to be kind of the money keywords. The keywords are directly going to bring in money. In the physician space, it might be the keywords that are definitely going to get somebody to book an appointment to come in. Those are going to be the key ones, but you also you might have more top of the funnel keywords, which are more generic. People are looking for answers to questions like, again, going back to podiatrist, why does my foot look weird? People aren't necessarily ready to spend money, but you might be able to provide some really good insight by producing really great content. So making sure that you match the intent of the keyword, If somebody's looking for, again, a podiatrist in Teaneck, making sure that either your website is focused on that keyword, especially the homepage, or if you do a bunch of other services, make sure you have a specific service page that's dedicated to that area, making sure it's natural, it makes sense, make sure you explain your authority in the industry, why you're a good choice versus other physicians, making sure that people understand where you are. And the more information you can provide, the better, making sure it's a nice, clean design and not just paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs of text, which is a bit more old school. Making sure that people can easily navigate the page and there's a nice, good flow. Maybe working with a copywriter that's focused on conversion can help. And then, of course, producing thought leadership content. Whether you have the goal to rank or increase these content pages in Google, being able to answer questions that people might have, is very powerful itself. Where, let's say somebody calls in or somebody sends an email, you can direct them right to a specific page in your site that answers that question. Saves everyone in the office a lot of time re-explaining this over and over again. Plus, it just helps reinforce you as the authority.
Do added videos, although videos might increase engagement with the viewer, do the videos themselves improve the Google rankings?
Again, not directly. I think it might help in the fact that you do have that engagement score and you do have embedded media to kind of switch things up a little bit and have a nice flow. So again, I wouldn't say that it directly helps, but there's other ways in which it might help. And if you do have some really good videos, that can be just powerful for engagement conversions.
In terms of call to action, what other call to actions would you recommend besides call to make an appointment?
Call for information. I think a lot of people, especially when they're going to a new doctor, they might be scared a little bit. Maybe they've had a bad experience with another doctor. Instead of maybe saying, book an appointment, how about call us and ask a question or call for more information? We'd be happy to help. I think that might help eliminate a lot of fears people might have when visiting a new doctor. Instead of just saying, hey, it's kind of like saying like, hey, let's get married real quick. Instead, you're saying, hey, let's go on a date first. Let's get to know one another. It allows them to call and get some more information and learn about why you guys are different. And then whomever answers the phone can work their way towards getting that appointment booked.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. How can people who are listening reach you if they'd like more information from you or would like to enlist your services?
Absolutely. I can be reached by Googling Jason Berkowitz. My agency is called Break the Web. So you can visit us at breaktheweb.agency. I'm also available at jasonberkowitz.com.
Well, it was really fascinating speaking with you today. Thank you very much for being here with us. This has been another episode of Marketing Tips for Doctors, speaking with Jason Berkowitz on SEO or search engine optimization. Thanks for being here. Till next time.
Thank you, Barbara.